You ever seen that one movie, Dead Prez?
Yeah, of course, it's my favorite film. It's the type of shit I want to do.
Word? Hey, you know that one scene? You know when the camera's like ticking? Slowly? Tick, tick, tick.
Hi, I'm Dom Griffin. I'm a film critic and you're watching The Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, that sort of thing. So if you like movies and popular culture and like to see somebody pick those things apart, please consider subscribing. Today I'm going to be reviewing the film Monster, a new Netflix release that has actually been sitting on the shelf for 3 years since it first debuted at Sundance all the way back in 2018. My interest in this film comes primarily from the involvement of 3 different people. The film stars Kelvin Harrison Jr., a hot up-and-comer who you have almost certainly seen in something over the last 5 or 6 years. He's probably most well known for starring in A24's Waves, a movie he's quite good in despite the movie itself being pretty mid. It's kind of like Euphoria for dummies or Moonlight if it was written by all 37 members of Brockhampton, but I've seen him in a diverse array of movies and I feel like he's got a lot of potential. The film is directed by Anthony Mandler, a veteran music video helmer responsible for some big videos from artists like MIA, Beyonce, and Rihanna, and this is his first time making a full-length feature. I've always dug Mandler's style and was curious to see how it might translate to film. And lastly, the script was co-written by a friend of the channel, Radha Blank, the writer, director, and star behind The 40-Year-Old Virgin, another Netflix release that was a severely underrated film from last year. These 3 people's involvement actually piqued my interest because outside of that, the general premise of this movie isn't really up my alley. Monster, based on the 1999 young adult novel of the same name, tells the story of Steve Harmon, played by Harrison Jr., an aspiring filmmaker going to the prestigious Stuyvesant High School in New York City. By all accounts, a good, upstanding kid who falls behind a murder rap for his alleged involvement in a bodega stick-up gone wrong. He's on trial with neighborhood acquaintance King, played by A$AP Rocky, after 2 of the other co-conspirators, played by John David Washington and Jerome, fingered Steve as the lookout for the crime. The film initially positions Steve as an innocent bystander, someone who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time when 2 guys from around the way decided to shoot someone over some cash and some cigarettes. This bright, articulate, and artsy young man with a great future ahead of him lumped in with the other thugs just because of the color of his skin.
Gang affiliation.
I'm not part of any gang.
Like the book, Monster uses a lot of heavy voiceover narration in the style of a screenplay, as Steve tries to make sense of his predicament as if he were ordering the events of the situation into the structure of the film you, the audience, is currently watching. It's a somewhat grating technique at times, one that feels too on the nose to be meaningful, but as the film progresses, it yields more touching moments than not.
I don't remember him looking this old. I don't remember his frown having so many lines. The hair above his forehead being so gray. His hands trembling in that way.
It's easy to relate to Steve in this position, his childish face against the gritty backdrop of a cell, his black boy joy montages doing photography projects with his hipster friends. The film wastes little time showing how close he is with his little brother, how warm his relationship with his parents feels. It's not particularly subtle work, sure, but it's very effective. As we see him struggle through court, being painted as a super predator by a DA who seems to have it out for him, he's a difficult figure to root against. But as the non-linear structure explodes outwards, more than just cross-cutting between the trial and his life before arraignment, a more complex portrait begins to emerge, putting into question the audience's sympathies. We see that King isn't just some hood Steve barely knows, but a guy he becomes close friends with, someone who is more complex than Steve's original protests imply. We see that their curious friendship drifts Steve further from the safe orbit his parents have created for him, enamored by the authenticity King's antics could bring to future films he wants to write. As more inconsistencies in his POV stack up, certain moments come into sharper focus, like seeing how wounded King looks when recounting a story of a betrayal he heard from an OG, and seeing that same look on his face in court, or how Mandler's camera lingers on Jeffrey Wright, who plays Steve's father, when he's asked during a visit if he believes his own son. The source material, penned by award-winning author Walter Dean Myers, who tragically passed a few years before this project came to fruition, leans more heavily into the notion of plurality, of the inherent complexity of identity and perspective, as well as more explicit observations about black masculinity. Those ideas are present in the film, for sure, like in a particularly discomforting moment where Steve, being visited by his mother, played by Jennifer Hudson, feels the judging eyes from the other inmates as she has him recite scripture with her. In those glances and Steve's revulsion from them, we can see how a kid whose life was otherwise sheltered from the environment that drove King to be a criminal would elect to delve further into that world for even a slice of the validation he's missing out on as a soft, picture-taking goody-goody. But where the book closes on a more somber, confrontational, and open-ended conclusion, something that isn't entirely dissimilar from the final moments of the Richard Gere film Primal Fear, the film film, through it all, leaves the audience with something more finite and hopeful, a more empathetic perspective that seems to give Steve more benefit of the doubt than he was willing to give to himself in the novel. It seems Mandler and the writing team were more interested in the Rashomon aspect of the book, the idea of truth as a mutable commodity, something underscored by, well, one of those classic film class discussions about the movie Rashomon that doesn't so much hint at this idea, but broadly telegraph it in semaphore.
You know, I took my wife to that movie on our first date. I wooed her with Akira Kurosawa.
I just want to know who's telling the truth.
You think there's only one truth, Alexandra?
Mandler, as a visual storyteller, projects a mature sureness in his gait, abstracting the scenes of the trial with a monochrome color palette and an off-putting cutting pattern that places the proceedings squarely into Steve's disgruntled viewpoint. It makes for a fascinating comparative study to his video for Comments Testify over a decade ago, a piece that shares some weird narrative overlap with Monster, but diametrically opposed approaches to aesthetics. The film also, at times, feels like a refutation of respectability politics, a movie that starts out asking you, the viewer, to take pity on this sweet, innocent kid because he does things the way we're told black kids are supposed to if they don't want to be profiled.
Pull up those pants, please.
To the point that we focus on Steve not deserving the horrors of the carceral state because he likes movies, ignoring the fact that King, though more of an aggressor in this injustice, is also a boy who made a mistake, one who can't even count on the loyalty of someone he considered to be a real friend. It's particularly interesting given how Rocky delivers a more captivating performance in his supporting capacity than most of his peers. This is, after all, a 3-year-old movie, and both Jerome and Harrison have grown significantly since having made this film. Compare Harrison's work here to his turn in the film Loose, where he really unlocks a brand new gear for himself. John David Washington, in particular, reads as show-stoppingly fake compared to his later work in Tenet. Hell, even Nas, someone we have firmly established on this channel as not being a gifted actor, has more presence in his small turn as a prison mentor than much of the cast. But the one idea the film gets at that resonated with me the most is how little criminal court is truly concerned with guilt or innocence. America's judicial system isn't an objective arbiter of truth or justice. Trials are little more than a battle of competing narratives. The jury, the audience, chooses which narrative wins. Often the evidence is less important than the way in which it is presented, the story it supports. Steve's story here holds more weight because of the sincerity of his white lawyer and the earnestness of his white film teacher, played by Tim Blake Nelson, who appears as a character witness. His inane humanity, his vulnerability, is only palatable to the jury due to the signifiers of respectability that keep him on the safer side of the fence from King. The movie, as the book, tries to be a meta-art project of Steve telling his own story, of trying to will his identity into the minds of anyone who perceives him. But the film's voiceover and style isn't enough to draw a more clear line to the idea that this nesting doll of narratives, this trial itself, isn't Steve's story, but rather a movie his attorney is directing, a story she has concocted to keep him out of jail. Whether or not the narrative they craft together works is besides the point. In the end, it's the revelation that storytelling, the stories we tell ourselves and to others, holds more weight than facts. In the end, Monster feels like a movie that says something more sinister and heartbreaking than it intends to. A film that closes on an uplifting moment that leaves the viewer pondering a lot of difficult truths completely at odds with its bittersweet denouement. And I think that's pretty good for a little indie that's been sitting on the shelves for years. Your mileage may vary with Monster. You might find it a little bit too on the nose, a little bit too blunt, but honestly, the visuals, the storytelling, there's a lot of really strong moments throughout. I think it's a pretty worthwhile movie to watch. I went in expecting it to be one of those fake important movies about like race and like the justice system and stuff, and like it really isn't that. It really does feel like something that has a little bit more nuance than I anticipated going in. Which is not something I can say for a lot of Netflix original films I have reviewed in the last year. So yeah, that's Monster. It is on Netflix today. If you are interested in seeing it, you should check it out. I think it's pretty good. I think Kelvin Harrison Jr. is still an actor to watch. I don't know why Aaron Sorkin thought he should play Fred Hampton in The Trial of Chicago 7, but almost everything else I've seen him in, he's been very good. Even in The High Note, a movie I thought was very boring, I thought he had a lot of promise there, so watch out for that kid. Yeah, and Anthony Mandler. I am excited to see, he has another movie on the way already with Letitia Wright, so like, good for him. I'm glad he's moved into movies. Not very many music video directors have made that leap recently particularly well, so kudos to that guy. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the movie. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the little bell thing that gives you notifications for when I put out new videos. That helps me out a ton. And if you have any thoughts about this movie or anything really, you can talk to me in the comments below because I love talking to you guys. So thank you again for watching. Hope everyone is staying safe, being good to yourselves and each other, wearing your masks, getting vaccinated, watching out for the ice cream man. I'm pretty sure ice cream truck's going to be out soon. It's like the middle of May, right? So like that could be fun. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.